Welcome back to our continuing look at the gospel according to the apostle Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector, he was an apostle, and he was a writer of the gospel. In that sense, we have three major accomplishments in this individual's life, and yet the reality is Matthew, like most of the apostles, is largely in the shadows to us. We don't really know too much. I've made in an earlier point the fact that Matthew wrote a gospel says that his faith in Jesus Christ remained true and strong some 30 years after his initial decision to follow Jesus. So he gives us a lasting testament to the reality of Jesus Christ for him and the need to live a Christian life. Matthew chapter 19, and I will be reading verses 4 through 6. The Everyday Bible, and it is the New Century Version. Matthew chapter 19 and verse 4. Jesus answered, "Surely you have read in the scriptures, when God made the world, he made them male and female. And God said, so a man will leave his father and mother and will be united with his wife, and the two will become one body. So there are not two, but one. God has joined the two together, so no one should separate them." Let us put it this way: there is the ideal in marriage, but there is no ideal in marriage. In simple terms, all marriages are flawed. And I think for anyone who is married, there has to be this recognition. If you do not recognize that all marriages are flawed, then you are ignoring the reality of what your marriage is. Now, to recognize that a marriage is flawed is not to say it is failing or going to end next week. I would say to you that great marriages are not the ones where the partners in the marriage go around saying we have an ideal marriage. You know, you sometimes see people who out in public want to come across as lovey-dovey, kissy-wissy, you know, speaking always in cutesy-wootsy little terms to each other. And when you see that, especially in a mature marriage, you kind of go, are you guys for real? Now, understand, a couple that has just been married for a few weeks, well, you kind of expect them to be kind of slobbering, hands all over each other sort of thing. That's just natural. And that kind of cools and wanes publicly as people are married for a number of years. So when we talk about the ideal in marriage, what we're saying is there's an ideal, but the marriage has to be lived in terms of the reality that it finds itself in. That reality might be unemployment, it might be disability, it might be dealing with the aftermath of a stillborn baby, it might be raising a child with a crippling form of disability. It might be the fact that in the midst of this marriage, you are dealing with in-laws who are in the declining years of life and need constant intervention and supervision in their care. The point is that great marriages are where the partners recognize the flaws that are there, but hold to the ideal in marriage. In other words, the two are one, not because everything is hunky dory, but because they choose day in and day out to make it work. Now, in my culture, there are tremendous stresses on marriage. In my lifetime, we have seen the role of women redefined. In the modern world, it is considered no longer acceptable for a woman to waste her considerable talents and abilities of her young adult years at home raising the family. In fact, why raise your kids when we have experts down the road to do it for you? It might be the daycare, or it might be the public school system. And the reality is, we've also downloaded a tremendous amount of not just responsibility, but much more than that on our school system, where they have to be the experts on all things children. And so the school and school boards have become overburdened with the need to not just teach children, but be the place that knows what is best for children. The historical reality is that women have always had to work hard. Prior to 1900, the vast majority, something like 90% or more of people lived on family farms. Guess what? The wife was involved in that business. She might have been quote unquote at home. So was the farmer. The reality is in the ancient world, for example, that businesses and homes were usually one and the same. A wife was working in the business and the home at the same time. The real difference today is the importance attached to the paycheck. The paycheck has become the defining mark of who and what a person is in the modern world, and especially within the women's movement. You see, the issue is not whether women should work outside the church. This is to start from the wrong place. And understand, I have no problems with women working outside the home. I was raised by in that sense, single mother who worked from the time I went to public school. I kind of look at this issue from a personal perspective and know some of the problems involved within it. The issue in marriage as believers in Christ is, what is our marriage about? And in particular, what are we as Christians about? Women and men both need to put the emphasis on creating the right environment for nurturing their family. This means for both that to focus on a career as priority is a mistake. The raising of children is too important to simply delegate to people outside the home. And the sad fact is that there are people in the church who feel that they can delegate the raising of their children to those outside the home, the experts at daycares, which in many cases are secular, and the public school system, which is decidedly secular. This does not mean that 24/7 we are with our children. It is rather they are our children, and we have the responsibility for them. And here I have to say I have a bit of bias as a pastor and as a person who majored in Christian education at the master's level. The foundation of Christian education is what? It's not the church, it is the home. If we want to raise children as godly and God-fearing and people conversant with the standards of the faith, it begins in the home, where we not only teach the basics of the faith, but we teach through life and lifestyle what it means to be followers of Jesus Christ. And again, as we did in the last reading, we return to the idea of the importance of discipleship. If we want to raise these children up in faith, then let us fulfill our responsibility. The epidemic of divorce in the church is a reflection of the fact that we in the church no longer believe in Christian priorities. That's a blunt statement and not fair in all cases, but the reality is facts speak for what is. To be Christian is to put the emphasis on people, not things. They can be good things like a spacious home, a spectacular career, a 5-star vacation, and so on. We cannot have everything. In the church, we have people who think they can be the next Apostle Paul, Martha Stewart, Dr. Spock. I do not mean the one with the pointy ears. And the CEO of a company by the age of 40. A Christian marriage is where the people put the priority on Jesus as their goal and direction in life. If that means forgoing a career, Cancun, caviar, and more, so be it. Divorce, in simple terms, happens because people expect the impossible. And that is a problem in all areas of our culture.